So get ready, because today we are diving into some seriously interesting, fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
The Dead Sea Scrolls,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the War Scroll.
Right.
Imagine, someone unearthed this like incredibly detailed battle plan.
Oh, wow.
For the end of the world.
Okay.
Complete with like inscriptions for weapons and all that.
So we're talking like a literal blueprint for the apocalypse.
Yeah, like it's wild.
And these texts offer a really unique perspective, a window into how ancient people envisioned the apocalypse and how those ideas kind of evolved over time.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about like a simple clash of armies or anything.
Yeah.
Like think angels, demons, a messianic king.
Oh, wow.
Like it's like a blockbuster movie waiting to happen.
It really is.
So are you ready to kind of unpack this ancient vision?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Of the apocalypse?
The War Scroll itself was one of the first scrolls actually discovered back in 1947.
Oh, wow.
In caves near the Dead Sea. And it paints this vivid picture of this like ultimate showdown between the sons of light, led by the angel Michael, and then the sons of darkness, who are led by the demon Belial.
It's incredible to me that these scrolls can transport us back.
It really is.
To this time of like such intense religious and political upheaval. But let's get into some specifics here.
Okay.
The War Scroll lays out this final battle.
Right.
But what's so fascinating to me is just the level of detail it provides.
Yeah.
We're talking troop formations, specific weaponry, even inscriptions on banners. Why do you think they were so meticulous in their descriptions?
That is one of the things that makes the scroll so intriguing. I mean, those details really give us a glimpse into like the mindset of the authors. They weren't just writing like some vague prophecy. They were crafting this really meticulous blueprint, like a military manual for the apocalypse. And it really suggests this deep belief in the power of words and symbols, as if like the inscriptions on the banners, on the weapons, weren't just decoration, but they were like imbued with spiritual potency.
It's like they believed that, like, by meticulously planning and detailing every aspect of this battle, they were somehow participating in, like, the divine plan.
Exactly. And there are even more fascinating details. They specify, like, age ranges for soldiers, that the army was volunteer only. Indicating this like this desire for order, discipline, and a certain level of spiritual purity.
Like a volunteer army for the apocalypse.
Yeah, I know.
That raises so many questions about like their beliefs regarding free will versus divine intervention. If the outcome is already preordained, why the need for volunteers?
That's a really great question, and it really gets to the heart of one of the central like tensions within the War Scroll. This idea of determinism versus free will. Even though victory is assured for the Sons of Light. The scroll emphasizes the importance of human action. Of choosing to align oneself with the forces of good. It suggests that even within a divinely ordained plan, individuals still have a choice to make a role to play in the cosmic drama.
It's like they believed that while the ultimate victory was in God's hands, they still had this responsibility to actively participate in bringing it about.
Exactly.
Yeah. But hold on. Going back to the leaders of these armies here. You mentioned Belial.
The
leader of the Sons of Darkness. Isn't that kind of a generic term for like bad or worthless?
You're right. It is. And that's where things get interesting. Belial starts out as a simple insult in the Hebrew Bible, meaning like worthless or good for nothing. But over time, this term evolves into something much, much bigger. By the Second Temple period. He's a full-fledged archdemon. The embodiment of evil. Leading the forces of darkness against the Sons of Light.
So he goes from like this minor insult to like the ultimate cosmic bad guy.
The ultimate bad guy.
Yeah. What can that tell us about how like ancient people viewed evil?
Well, it shows us how those ideas about evil developed and became more complex over time. It's not just about like bad behavior anymore. It's about this like cosmic force in opposition to God.
Right. And this concept of like a cosmic battle wasn't unique to like the Israelites or anything.
You're right. Yeah. You see it in other ancient cultures as well.
Right. Like those epic battles between like gods and monsters.
Exactly.
That you find like in ancient myths all over the world.
Exactly.
But what sets the Israelite version apart?
That crucial difference is this covenant with God. Okay. So the Israelites believed that their fate wasn't just determined by like battling deities, but it was tied to their adherence to this pact with God. Okay. So this covenant, this agreement, it becomes this key element in shaping their apocalyptic worldview.
So it's not just about like who wins the battle up in the heavens,
right?
But it's also about like how humanity lives up to their side of the deal.
Exactly.
Down here on Earth.
Yeah.
It adds a whole new dimension to the concept of like cosmic warfare.
Totally.
Yeah, and there's this apocalyptic worldview. It wasn't something that was always present, was it?
It wasn't, no.
Like, how did that emerge?
Well, it emerged as a response to historical turmoil.
Okay.
So when the Israelites faced like repeated defeats, exile, oppression, their idea of a decisive battle shifted from the past to the future. Okay. It became this source of hope in times of suffering.
So instead of focusing on like past victories, they looked ahead to like this future victory.
Right.
This final showdown that would like usher in a new era.
Precisely. Yeah. And that's where the War Scroll comes in.
Okay.
So it's this detailed description of this two-part war.
All right.
So we have a war of divisions against various nations, followed by a final battle against the Kiddim.
All right. So this war of divisions sounds pretty intense.
It does.
Is this one continuous war, or like were there periods of peace in between?
That's a question that's actually puzzled scholars for years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's debate about whether it's one continuous war or two separate conflicts.
Oh, wow.
Maybe even two separate texts that were later combined.
Wait, you're saying combined texts?
Yeah.
So like the War Scroll might actually be like a compilation of
like
even older writings.
Yeah.
How do scholars even begin to like unravel something like that?
It's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
But there are clues within the text itself. So scholars look for variations in like vocabulary, grammatical structures, even literary styles that might point to different authors or time periods. They compare the War Scroll to other known texts from the Second Temple period, looking for parallels or points of divergence.
It's like a literary detective story trying to piece together the history of the document and the community that created it.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the war itself.
Okay.
You mentioned it was a two-part war.
Yes.
Culminating in a final battle against the Romans.
Yes.
What kind of details does the scroll provide about these wars?
So get ready for this.
Okay.
Because it gets super specific.
Okay.
The War Scroll outlines like troop formations, weaponry, even age ranges for soldiers. Okay. And remember those inscriptions I mentioned?
Okay, yeah.
They're not just like random scribbles or anything. They're detailed descriptions of the banners that each unit will carry.
Okay.
Almost like heraldry for like a divine army.
It's incredible to imagine like the thought and planning that went into envisioning like this final confrontation.
It's quite a feat.
But all this talk of like troop formations and tactics.
Yeah.
Is there like any evidence that this connects to like real world military practices of the time?
That's a great question.
Were the authors like familiar with actual military strategy?
What's fascinating here is that the scroll's descriptions of military formations and tactics closely align with the Roman army structure of that era.
Okay.
Some scholars even believe that the authors might pinpoint a specific year.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Based on the historical events and the Roman military structure that they describe.
You mean the scroll's authors might have like actually incorporated what they knew about like the Roman military?
It's possible. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
But I'm still struggling with this idea that the war's outcome is already decided. Yet they're like meticulously planning and detailing every aspect of it.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to that central theme of determinism and suffering. So the War Scroll presents this like a complex view of how those two concepts intertwine. So even though the Sons of Light are destined to win, the process involves hardship and sacrifice. Suffering isn't avoided. It's seen as this essential part of the journey. A divine mystery.
So it's not like a free pass to victory.
No.
A guarantee of a like painless triumph.
No, not at all. Suffering is seen as a crucible. This test that purifies and prepares the righteous for that ultimate victory.
So they fight this epic war. Good triumphs over evil. Then what? Do we just fast forward to like happily ever after?
This is where things get really interesting. After the Sons of Darkness are defeated, this messianic king emerges, ushering in this utopian age of peace and prosperity.
The classic happy ending. But what does this utopian age look like?
Oh, it's amazing.
Like according to the scroll, what are we talking?
So imagine a world where war is abolished. Where swords are literally beaten into plowshares. And spears into pruning hooks. It's this image of radical disarmament, a complete rejection of violence. The land flourishes, children thrive, and even wild beasts pose no threat.
It sounds like a return to like the Garden of Eden. Like a restoration of like Paradise Lost.
That's a great observation. There's definitely a sense of like returning to a state of primordial perfection. This world where humanity lives in harmony with nature and the divine.
And it goes beyond just like the absence of war,
They describe a world where the land flourishes, where children thrive, wild beasts pose no threat.
It's like this idyllic vision of like peace and harmony and abundance.
Exactly.
But it's not just about like material prosperity, is it?
It's not.
There's this spiritual dimension to this messianic age as well.
Absolutely.
What are we talking about?
So one of the most striking details is this idea that the divine presence will dwell among the people. So imagine a world where the veil between the human and divine is lifted. Where God's presence is palpable, ever present.
It's a world where like the sacred and the mundane are like intertwined, where every aspect of life is imbued with a sense of like the divine.
Exactly.
But what about this messianic king who like ushers in this utopian age? Do we know anything about him? Is he a specific historical figure or like a more symbolic representation?
That's a question that has puzzled scholars for centuries.
Really?
Unfortunately, the section of the scroll that describes the Messianic king in detail is damaged. So we don't have a complete picture. But based on what we can piece together, it seems he's descended from the lineage of King David. He fulfills those ancient prophecies about a righteous ruler who will restore Israel to its former glory.
So he's not just like a political leader. He's like a divinely appointed figure, this Messiah, who embodies the hopes and aspirations of the people.
Exactly.
But knowing what we know about like the fate of the Second Temple and like the subsequent scattering of like the Jewish people, it makes you wonder if the authors of the War Scroll ever saw their vision of a messianic age come to fruition.
That's a great point.
Did they believe that they were living in the time of the final battle?
That's a question we can only speculate about. But one of the most intriguing aspects of the War Scroll is its possible connection to a pivotal event in Jewish history. The Great Revolt against the Romans in 6673 CE.
The Great Revolt. The one that led to the destruction of the Second Temple.
Exactly.
So you're saying these scroll authors might have actually participated in that uprising?
It's definitely possible.
Wow.
Yeah, it raises some fascinating questions. Did they see the revolt as the beginning of the final battle described in the scroll? Did their apocalyptic beliefs shape their actions? And ultimately their fate?
That is a question to ponder.
It really is.
To think that this ancient scroll could be connected to like such a defining moment in history, it truly underscores like the power of ideas to shape events in the real world. It's mind-blowing to think that these scroll authors were living in such a tumultuous period, clinging to the hope of this final victory and this messianic age.
It's quite a story.
It really is.
It makes you wonder what those authors would think if they could see the world today.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Like, how would they interpret our own anxieties and visions of the future?
That's a fascinating question.
It is.
It reminds us that, like, ideas about the end of the world are often reflections of, like, the anxieties, fears, and hopes of the people who create them.
Exactly.
And speaking of, like, anxieties and hopes, the War Scroll paints this really vivid picture.
It does.
Of this messianic age.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that world would look like?
Oh, the messianic age.
Yeah.
This is where the scroll shifts from, like, that detailed battle plan to this utopian vision. It's like a glimpse into their hopes.
Yeah.
For a world transformed.
What a transformation it is.
Yeah.
They envision this world where war is completely abolished.
Yes.
Where those swords are literally beaten into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's a powerful image.
It is.
Of, like, radical disarmament. It's complete rejection of violence.
Yeah, I think it speaks to a deep longing for peace and a belief in the possibility of a world without war.
It almost seems like a return to, like, the Garden of Eden. Like a restoration of, like, Paradise Lost.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
There's definitely a sense of, like, returning to a state of, like, primordial perfection.
Okay.
This world where humanity lives in harmony with nature.
Right.
And with the divine.
And it goes beyond just the absence of war.
You're right. It does. They describe a world where the land flourishes.
Okay.
Where children thrive. Wild beasts pose no threat.
It's like this idyllic vision of peace.
Yeah.
And harmony.
It really is.
An abundance.
Beautiful picture they paint.
It really is. So it's not just about material prosperity.
Right.
Right.
It's not.
There's the spiritual dimension to this messianic age as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most striking details is this idea that the divine presence will dwell among the people.
Okay.
Imagine a world where the veil between the human and divine is lifted, where God's presence is palpable and ever present.
It's a world where the sacred and the mundane are intertwined.
Yes.
Where every aspect of life is imbued with this sense of the divine.
Exactly.
But what about the Messianic King?
Right.
Who ushers in this utopian age?
Yeah.
Do we know anything about him?
That's a question that has puzzled scholars for centuries.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, the section of the scroll that describes the Messianic King in detail is damaged.
Oh, man.
So we don't have a complete picture. But based on what we can piece together, it seems he's descended from the lineage of King David.
Okay.
He fulfills those ancient prophecies about a righteous ruler who will restore Israel to its former glory.
So he's not just a political leader.
Yeah.
He's a divinely appointed figure. This Messiah.
Yeah.
Who embodies the hopes and aspirations of the people.
Right.
He's the one who will finally establish God's kingdom on earth.
Exactly.
Okay.
He's seen as a restorer, a healer, a bringer of peace and justice.
It's a powerful vision.
It is.
And one that has inspired, like, countless movements and revolutions.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout history.
Absolutely.
But this idea of a messianic figure who will bring about a utopian age.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
It's a great question.
I mean, do you think it's, like, a realistic vision of the future?
It's certainly a vision that has captivated and inspired people for centuries. Whether it's achievable in, like, a literal sense is a matter of debate.
Yeah. But I think the deeper meaning lies in the longing it expresses. Okay. The yearning for a world transformed.
Yeah.
A world free from suffering and injustice.
It speaks to, like, a very deep human desire for a better world.
Yeah.
For a world where peace and justice prevail.
Exactly.
But it also raises these questions about how we might get there.
Right.
Does the War Scroll offer any, like, guidance on how to bridge those divides?
Right.
To, like, heal the wounds that separate us?
I mean, while the War Scroll is primarily focused on this cosmic battle between good and evil, it does offer some clues about, like, the social and ethical values that would characterize the Messianic age.
Right.
For instance, there's a strong emphasis on like unity and solidarity.
Okay.
The scroll imagines a world where people are no longer divided by like tribal affiliations, social status, or even religious beliefs.
So it's not just about defeating external enemies.
It's about like overcoming those internal divisions that weaken us from within.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The scroll envisions a community united by their shared commitment to righteousness.
It's a vision that certainly resonates with our own challenges today.
Oh, yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
I mean, the world feels increasingly divided.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think there's anything we can learn?
Yeah, I think there is.
From the War Scroll about how to like bridge those divides.
What do you think there is?
To create a more unified and just world.
I think while the War Scroll may seem like an ancient and maybe even like an outdated text, its emphasis on unity, justice, compassion speaks to some of our most pressing contemporary challenges.
Right.
It reminds us that building a better world requires both individual effort and collective action.
Okay.
It's not about waiting for a messianic figure to come and save us. It's about each of us taking responsibility for creating the kind of world we want to live in.
So it's about making choices in our daily lives that reflect those values of justice and compassion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the War Scroll reminds us that even like seemingly small acts of kindness can have this like ripple effect, inspiring others, contributing to a larger movement for positive change.
It's a powerful message.
It is.
And one that's easy to like lose sight of in a world that often feels dominated by conflict and division.
Definitely.
It reminds us that even in the midst of darkness, there's always hope.
There is.
Yeah.
And the War Scroll, with its vision of a world transformed, offers us a glimpse of that hope.
Yeah.
This reminder that the human spirit yearns for a world where peace and compassion prevail.
It's inspiring to think about like the power of these ancient texts to not only like reflect the past, but also illuminate the present and like offer a vision of a potentially brighter future.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up our deep dive into the War Scroll, and I have one more question.
Great.
We've talked about the scroll's contents.
Yeah.
Its possible historical context, its influence on later apocalyptic literature.
Right.
And even like its relevance for us today.
Yeah.
But what about the scroll itself?
All right.
What can you tell us about like its physical form, its condition, and like the challenges of interpreting such an ancient and fragmentary document?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the ideas, the imagery, but the physicality of the scroll itself is fascinating.
Yeah.
So the War Scroll, like most of the Dead Sea Scrolls, is made of parchment.
Okay.
So this carefully prepared animal skin.
So it's not paper.
It's not paper.
Like what we use today.
No. Parchment was the main writing material in the ancient world.
Right.
It was a valuable commodity.
Okay.
The scribes who created these scrolls were highly skilled artisans taking great care in preparing the parchment.
Okay.
Smoothing it, stretching it,
right,
treating it with special solutions to make it suitable for writing.
It's amazing to think about like the time and effort
right
that went into creating these scrolls. They were like true works of art.
Absolutely.
Meticulously crafted by hand.
Yeah, and the War Scroll is like a prime example.
Okay.
Originally, it measured over 8 meters long.
Wow.
Written in this beautiful flowing script.
Okay.
But like many ancient texts, it hasn't survived completely intact.
Oh, right.
Over the centuries, it's been exposed to moisture insects, just the natural process of aging.
So when scholars are studying the War Scroll, they're not working with like a complete document.
Exactly. It's a fragmented document with missing pieces and sections that can be incredibly difficult to decipher.
It must be like trying to solve this.
Yeah.
Like giant jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Some of the pieces missing and others faded or damaged.
It is. It really is.
How do scholars even approach something like that?
It's a painstaking process.
Yeah.
But scholars meticulously piece together those fragments compare them to other scrolls,
right,
and even use advanced imaging techniques to try and reconstruct that missing text.
Okay.
It's really a testament to their dedication and expertise that we're able to glean so much information from these like fragmented remains.
It's amazing what they can do with like,
I know, it's incredible,
modern technology and their deep knowledge of like ancient languages and scripts.
Absolutely.
But with all those gaps and missing pieces, doesn't that make it like incredibly difficult to interpret the texts accurately?
It certainly adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah.
But even with those challenges, the War Scroll provides this like invaluable window into the beliefs and practices of the people who created it.
Okay.
And the study of these scrolls is an ongoing process.
Right.
Each new discovery, each new piece of the puzzle that's put into place helps to deepen our understanding of these ancient texts and the world they represent.
It's like this ongoing conversation across the centuries.
Love that.
With each generation of scholars bringing their own insights and perspectives to these ancient texts.
Yeah, it's not just historians who are involved. It's,
named.
This conversation includes like archaeologists, linguists, theologians, even scientists.
Wow.
All working together to unlock the secrets of the past.
It's a truly interdisciplinary effort.
It is.
Bringing together all these different areas of expertise to help us understand not just like what these ancient texts say,
but what they mean.
Exactly. And it's through that collaborative effort, that pooling of knowledge and expertise, that we gain a deeper, more nuanced understanding of these texts.
Right.
We see them not just as like relics of the past, but as living documents that continue to speak to us across the millennia.
Speaking of like seeing them as living documents, one of the things that struck me about the War Scroll is like the level of detail it provides about military formations, weaponry, and tactics.
Right.
It's almost like a military manual for the apocalypse.
It really is.
How did these authors, who were seemingly like secluded in the Judean desert, acquire like such detailed knowledge of warfare?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's led to some fascinating theories about the authors of the War Scroll and their possible connection to military life.
Okay.
Many scholars believe that at least some members of the Essene community
who are thought to have written the Dead Sea Scrolls had military experience.
Wait, the Essenes?
Yeah.
I thought they were like pacifists.
Right.
Like withdrawing from the world to focus on spiritual matters.
That's a common perception.
Okay.
And it's true that many Essenes emphasize peace and nonviolence.
Right.
But we have to remember that this was a diverse community.
Okay.
And there were likely different factions within the Essene movement with varying views.
Right.
Some of those factions might have been more militant, believing that armed resistance against like foreign powers, like the Romans, was justified.
So there was a spectrum of beliefs within this community, even on something as fundamental as the use of violence.
Exactly. It's a reminder that even within groups that seem unified from the outside, there's often this diversity of opinion and belief.
Right. And that complexity is reflected in the War Scroll itself.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yeah. We see this like tension between the deterministic view of a preordained victory and the emphasis on the importance of human action, of choosing to fight for righteousness.
Exactly. It suggests that the authors were grappling with some of the same questions that we still wrestle with today.
Right.
Questions about the nature of good and evil.
Right.
The role of free will.
Yeah.
In a world governed by divine providence and the responsibility of individuals to act justly and to fight for a better world.
It's a reminder that even though the War Scroll was written centuries ago, in a time and place very different from our own, its themes and its message continue to resonate with us today.
I think so.
It speaks to the enduring power of like human imagination.
Yeah.
Our capacity to like grapple with those big questions of life, death, and the meaning of it all.
Exactly. And it's by engaging with those questions.
By like exploring different perspectives
Right.
and seeking wisdom from the past.
Okay.
That we can gain a richer understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
It's a journey that requires both intellectual rigor and like spiritual openness.
Yeah.
A willingness to like embrace the uncertainties and the possibilities that lie ahead.
I agree.
And sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected places.
Absolutely.
Like ancient scrolls hidden away in caves for centuries, waiting to be discovered and to challenge our understanding of the world.
It's a reminder that the past is never truly past. It lives on in our stories, our beliefs, and our aspirations, shaping the way we understand ourselves and the world around us.
And sometimes those stories from the past can like offer us guidance, inspiration, and even a glimmer of hope
as we navigate the challenges of the present. And strive to create a more just and compassionate future.
Indeed. The War Scroll, with its ancient vision of a world transformed, reminds us that even in the midst of darkness, the human spirit yearns for light, for justice, and for a world where peace and compassion prevail.
It really is remarkable how these ancient texts can speak to us across millennia, offering insights into not only the past but also the present and perhaps even the future. We've explored so much about the War Scroll, from its dramatic depiction of this apocalyptic battle to its hopeful vision of a messianic age. But there's one more aspect I want to touch on before we wrap up. We've talked about the scroll's connection to the Essenes, but do we know anything about what ultimately happened to them?
That's a question that has intrigued scholars for decades. What we do know is that the Essene community at Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, seems to have disappeared sometime around the year 70 CE.
And that coincides with the destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans, right?
Exactly, and that's led some scholars to speculate that the Essenes might have been caught up in the violence of the Great Revolt, perhaps even participating in the fighting.
So their belief in a coming apocalyptic battle might have actually led them to take up arms against the Romans.
It's certainly a possibility. Remember, the War Scroll itself provides detailed descriptions of military tactics and formations, suggesting that at least some members of the community had some familiarity with warfare.
It's a sobering thought, the idea that their apocalyptic beliefs might have influenced their actions and ultimately their fate. But it also underscores the power of ideas to shape events in the real world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The War Scroll serves as a potent reminder that ideas, particularly those with religious or spiritual significance, can have profound consequences. They can inspire hope, motivate action, and even at times fuel conflict.
It's a reminder that the study of ancient texts is not just an intellectual exercise, a way to satisfy our curiosity about the past. It's also a way to understand how those ideas from the past continue to shape our world today. But speaking of shaping the world, we've discussed the War Scroll's influence on later apocalyptic literature, especially within Christianity. Can you elaborate on that a bit? How did this ancient Jewish text influence the development of Christian beliefs about the end times?
That's a fascinating question, and it highlights the interconnectedness of these two religious traditions. The War Scroll, with its vivid imagery of cosmic warfare, angelic armies, and a messianic figure who triumphs over evil, had a profound influence on the development of Christian apocalyptic thought. Think of the Book of Revelation in the New Testament, for example. It's full of imagery and themes that echo the War Scroll.
So you're saying that some of the key ideas we find in Christian apocalyptic literature, ideas about a final battle between good and evil, about a messianic figure who will usher in a new age, can be traced back to this ancient Jewish text.
Exactly. The War Scroll, in a way, provided a template, a framework for later Christian writers to explore these themes in their own contexts.
It's amazing how these ideas, these stories can travel across time and cultures, influencing the way people understand the world and their place in it.
It really is, and it speaks to the power of storytelling, the way narratives can shape our beliefs and our values.
And sometimes even our actions. But before we wrap up completely, I want to circle back to one final thought. Throughout this deep dive into the War Scroll, we've encountered themes of conflict, suffering, and ultimately hope. Do you think there's an overarching message or takeaway that we can glean from this ancient text, something that speaks to us across the centuries and offers guidance for our own lives?
I think there is. At its core, the War Scroll is a story about resilience, about the human capacity to confront darkness and to strive for a better world. It reminds us that even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges, even when the world feels divided and hope seems dim, the human spirit continues to yearn for light, for justice, for a world where peace and compassion prevail.
It's a message that feels particularly relevant today, wouldn't you say? I mean, we're living in a time of unprecedented challenges facing global conflicts, climate change, political polarization, social unrest. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to lose sight of that hope.
It is, but the War Scroll reminds us that hope is not passive. It's active. It requires us to make choices, to align ourselves with the forces of good, to fight for what we believe in, even when the outcome seems uncertain.
So it's a call to action, a reminder that even small acts of kindness, courage, and compassion can make a difference.
Exactly. And that even in the darkest of times, we have the power to choose hope, to choose love, to choose to work towards building a world where those values prevail.
What a powerful and timely message to end on. It's been an incredible journey exploring the world of the War Scroll. Thank you for sharing your insights and for helping us to uncover the layers of meaning and relevance within this ancient text.
It's been my pleasure, and to you listening, I hope this deep dive into the War Scroll has inspired you to keep exploring, to keep questioning, and to keep seeking wisdom from the past. You never know what treasures you might uncover.